Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist, and my mission is to use this space to bring content to you to help you understand your struggle with food and break free from binge eating. And today I want to have a look at mindset, because this, I think, is one of the biggest predictors of recovery success than anything else. So there's a lot of information out there about what you can do to recover from binge eating. And a lot of the time it's things like, don't restrict, be more mindful around food, connect with your body, learn to manage your emotions, all of these kinds of things that are practical. If you do this, chances are your binge eating will reduce. So what often happens is people will read a post, they'll watch a video, they get excited and they're like, yes, that's what I need to do, I'm going to do it and fix my binge eating. So that feeling of excitement carries them into, being present with food or whatever it is that they decide to do. And it seems to work for a little while, and then before they know it, the old behaviour's back, the old patterns seem to come back in, and they just feel like a failure because they haven't managed to do whatever it was that they were trying to do. Like their old thinking has caught up with them. So this idea that we can just decide what we need to do and then do it, I think for a lot of people it trips you up, right? This idea that we can just decide our behaviour is going to be different, when actually it's the way we think and feel about stuff that drives our behaviour. So when we're excited about a new idea, it's easy. When the excitement wears off and the reality of every day and old thinking patterns come back, we're back in our old behaviours again. So we end up in this kind of swing, feeling stuck, and then really beating up on ourselves that we're not doing what we want to do. So I've identified 3 really important aspects of your mindset that if you were to challenge these and start to develop some of these skills, actually putting into practice those things that you've been struggling with, will be easier. And so the first mindset shift is, don't argue with reality. So what I mean by this is we expel so much energy being frustrated or like mentally arguing with ourselves about things that are beyond our control. So it might be something like, if you've just binged, now after the binge, the fact that you binged is beyond your control. Okay, there is nothing you can do about it now. You think that arguing about the fact that you did it, telling yourself you shouldn't have done it, all those kinds of things are going to help you not do it again. And it just doesn't work like that. Maybe you stepped on the scales and you saw a number and you didn't like that number, and you have spent days, weeks, however long, beating yourself up about the size of your body, when actually, like, the size of your body today, that is reality. It's beyond your control. So in terms of how to actually do this, I think 1, getting clear on why accept reality. And I suppose the reason for accepting reality is that you can't win when you fight reality. Byron Katie's got a lovely quote that says, yes, you can argue with reality and you'll only lose 100% of the time. So it is energy that could be focused on moving you forward that's holding you back. And reality, it is reality, okay? And if we make friends with reality, we accept the things we cannot change, like the serenity prayer that they use in a lot of the 12-step programs. When we accept the things we cannot change, we then look at finding the courage to change the things that we can. So it's important as well to identify what is reality and what is your story about reality. So reality is, I stepped on the scales and this was the number I saw. Your story about it is, oh my goodness, I've gained weight, I'm never going to lose weight, my body's too big, I'm such a failure, and this, that, and the other, people are going to think this, people are going to be saying this, all of that around it. That is not reality, that is your story about reality. And that is flexible. That is what you are making it mean. One person could step on the scales and see that same number and have a very different reaction to the one that you're having. So it involves taking a pause and saying, what what are the facts of this circumstance? And the facts are something that if 100 people looked at that situation, they would draw the same conclusion. So you might be like, okay, well, I've eaten X, Y, Z, I've binged, that means I've messed up again, I feel terrible about that. All the other stuff around it is your story about it, when the reality is simply, I ate X, Y, Z, then exactly what you ate. Because some people might not even call it a binge. And it involves a level of willingness to let go. Because actually when we cling tightly to things we can't control, it's painful. When we let go, often there's some peace on the other side. The second mindset you might benefit from developing is to tolerate dissonance. Now, dissonance really goes against the black and white thinker. And we know that most people who struggle with binge eating have a black and white thinking style. They're all or they're nothing. And dissonance is kind of like, it's a conflict. So it's when you've got two sides of you believing or wanting different things. We don't like it. So let's say, you know, part of you wants to binge and part of you wants to be more restrictive and lose weight. When those two parts are in opposition, they're activated, you know, they clash. They can't coexist very peacefully. So one has to be shut down. So I'm just going to switch off and I'm not going to think about that side, whether it's restriction or whether it's binging. I'm not going to allow myself to think about binging. I'm going to focus on restriction, or it might be the other way, that. And so dissonance is kind of allowing two things, accepting dissonance or becoming more comfortable with it is allowing both to exist at once. So you might get to the end of the day and you might be like, oh, I've had a really bad day because of what I've eaten. And actually, like, the dissonance would be tolerating dissonance rather than making it one thing or another, is most days have some good and some bad in it. So if you're telling yourself it was a bad day, where's the good? And can you hold the good at once? Because in order to call it a bad day, you have to ignore all the good. So when we refuse to accept dissonance, we just have to keep ignoring information so that we can plant our flag over here and say, I know this for certain. And this desire to avoid dissonance, again, is about wanting to be certain about something. It's wanting to reduce ambiguity. You know, and perhaps a good place to start challenging this is probably not around food, because there's more emotional energy around food. But start with people. Start with somebody who you really don't like. You would say they're a terrible person. And look for the good in them. Like, when the mind is determined to find evidence for something, it usually can. So when we talk about like dismantling black and white thinking, it's not always about, oh, let me find the grey, let me find the middle ground. And I don't even know where it is because I don't know what it looks like. Sometimes that challenging of the black and white thinking is allowing the black and the white thinking to exist at the same time, even though it clashes. And a great place to start with this is, I've mentioned her once already, but probably Byron Katie. She's got worksheets where you go through scenarios, you identify your thinking, and then you do these turnaround statements where you start looking for opposite and different interpretations of the event. And it really helps you, and it certainly helped me, get much clearer on how I create this reality for myself based on what I'm thinking and feeling. And that actually I do have an element of choice. Like, I have a choice to challenge how I think about something. It's not necessarily, because people think, okay, I'm believing this and it's not helping me, and now I need to believe the opposite. And this is why change is so hard as well, because sometimes when you're trying to change your thinking, you've got the old thinking at the same time as the new thinking, and the two of them might be opposite. The old thinking might be like, my body is terrible and not good enough, and the new thinking might be, I feel comfortable and I accept my body as it is. When those two are like existing together, one wants to win. But if we can get comfortable with dissonance, we can recognise that yes, the old thinking's here and it is having an impact on me. But look, I can introduce the new thinking and I can hold both at the same time. I can sit in that tension where part of me is saying that this is not good and part of me is saying that it's okay. Without being able to get to a place where we can hold two things like that, I think we really struggle to move forward. We really struggle to change our mindset because, again, the all or nothing thinking just wants to flip it around. We just want to do a 180 and get rid of all those old unhelpful thoughts and embrace the new ones. And finding a way to allow them to coexist, I think, is what will enable you to strengthen those new beliefs and move forward. And the last mindset piece is to learn to keep your word. Now, people who struggle with binge eating tend to be people pleasers and obligers, and they're usually often, I don't want to make too broad a generalisation, but often the kind of people that when they say to somebody they'll do something, they follow through. They don't like to let people down. Yet they don't afford that same thing to themselves. So someone struggling with binge eating, if this is you, I bet you have made promise after promise to yourself about what you're going to do, and then when you don't do it, you feel terrible about yourself. So this making promises to ourselves and then breaking them is so corrosive to self-esteem. It makes us feel like crap. It makes us feel like failures. It makes us feel like we can't do anything because we can't even, feed ourselves well, whatever well means. And my sister-in-law, who's done a lot of mindset work around her relationship with food, she said to me that she came to the realization that she needed to turn herself into somebody she wanted to please. And it's a bit like, I think it's Jordan Peterson writes about treating ourselves as someone who needs to be taken care of. Like, you have people in your life that you take care of, and like you're in that as well. And perhaps you need to be taken care of first before you can take care of anyone else. But where you are tripping yourself up with this is you are setting promises to yourself that are not realistic. You are saying to yourself, okay, tomorrow I'm just going to completely change my behaviour around food. I'm going to be completely different around food than I've been for the last years, months, however long I've been struggling. Like, you tell yourself that you should be able to do this. You should be able to just decide you're going to be different. And then when you don't manage to do that, you make it mean that you've messed up. So really, like, the way to start developing this as a skill is to start with something small and consistent that's for your higher good in some way, whether it's around food or whether it's not, but that it's something little that you keep recommitting to yourself. And you also promise yourself that if you forget or, you don't do it perfectly, that you won't beat yourself up. That's a much nicer promise to make to yourself, is that if I mess up, I'm not going to beat myself up for it. Or if I do, because it's automatic, as soon as I realise what I'm doing, I'm going to say something more reassuring to myself. Something that just acknowledges that, yes, you're not perfect, and that's okay. It's okay not to do something 100% right, 100% perfectly. Can it be 50-50? Can you sit in that dissonance? Is that just the reality of your situation at the moment? So how you speak to yourself matters. When you're jumping into all the things you think you need to do to recover from binge eating, but you're not looking at this stuff that's driving it, like, of course you keep feeling like you're falling back. So I hope this was helpful. Have a great day. See you on the next video.